All right, hi, I'm Emily Kittrell, so I'm going to go ahead and start my presentation for Perspectives on the Narrative for Dr. Klein, and these are my lovely audience members. Just pan over here. All right, so we're going to go ahead and start. All right, one second. All right, so we're going to be talking about John Cheever's The Country Husband. I'm going to talk about the main character, Francis Weed, who is essentially tired of domesticity and wants to feel alive again, basically. As well as when reading the story, it's very similar to the author's own personal life as well. I did a little research on John Cheever, and after reading Blake Bailey's Cheever on a Life, published in 2009, I realized how similar his life is to Francis's. They both lived in an uptight, nothing out of order neighborhood where being an anomaly wasn't exactly welcoming. Now, of course, I believe Cheever was tired of living in a facade where everything had to be perfect, and expressed this feeling through this short story. Of course, he was also kind of a bit of an alcoholic, like most authors were during that time period of the early to mid 20th century. Bailey also wrote on how a neighbor would play the Moonlight Sonata, just like Francis's neighbor as well, to everyone, that everyone had their own personal little quirks. I believe Cheever has a slight distaste for domesticity too. In our book, the Oxford Book of America's Best Short Stories by Joyce Carol Oates, published in 2012, Francis was describing his house and said that nothing here was neglected, nothing had not been burnished. He talks about how organized his house is after coming home from a plane crash. His house represents his life. There's no room for anything to be out of order. And also mentioned that our main character was starting to feel alive again. The beginning starts off kind of with a bang. Francis was in a plane crash. Everyone thankfully survives, but he starts to look at the world in a different light. He begins reminiscing about times in his life where he faced life or death, such as when he was fighting the war. He mentions the war often. He describes his family dinner as being a battlefield. And then at a social gathering, he sees a woman serving the guests that was ridiculed in public after the war in her hometown for laying with a Nazi. Different situations are causing Francis to look at his life and wonder where time went. He was no longer interested in what other people thought, and he became more and more bold. In Lawrence Desner's Gender and Structure in John Cheever's The Country Husband, published in 1994, which is found on the Galileo site, he makes a statement that the short story could be considered almost a farce because Francis is becoming so bold, he, as Desner states, narrowly escapes getting into trouble. He becomes infatuated with the young babysitter Anne Richardson, so much so that he falls in love with her. Nothing bad ever really happens, but Desner wrote that he puts in jeopardy his marriage and his family standing in their hypocritically unforgiving, moralistic community. Francis then begins to realize, after almost losing his wife Julia, that he needs to get himself together and decides to see a psychiatrist. And in doing so, he finds a hobby that he enjoys and can channel all of his energy. He takes up woodworking. So in the end, Francis has a rocky start to finding himself again, and his wife had to do a little damage control, but the perfect neighborhood didn't suffer any social casualties. It still remains the same. Cheever said it best by saying there was no turpitude. There has not been a divorce since he lived there. There had not even been a breath of scandal. The Weeds will not be the family. That proves that statement to be wrong. So I hope everybody enjoyed my presentation. Again, it was a pleasure, and I hope everybody has a great rest of the day. Dr. Klein, I enjoyed your class. Thank you very much.